out for another hike. And I'll tell you, this is a beautiful place to be. Hi, I'm the Colorblind Architect, and welcome back. I'm up at Alta, Alta Ski Resort in Utah. I've been here hundreds of times. This is one of my favorite places to be. The irony is I've never actually hiked here in the summertime. And so I decided to come up and do that today. So I am hiking on the Devil's Castle Trail. And it is a glorious place to be. Far more beautiful than I expected. It's just an amazing place. And I wanted to share it with you, but also mention just something that I've been thinking about lately. So, the American Institute of Architects, I went to the convention this summer, and as part of it, they included roughly 15 to 18 credits of continuing education that were included in an online format. And I've been going through those, and that in itself is quite boring. But one of the courses that I took, well, it got me thinking, but not in the way that the presenter wanted me to think. As it often does, my mind is a bit different than a lot of people's. I tend to be skeptical. I tend to think outside the box, and I also tend to question authority. Well, the topic of this particular course was the topic of global warming. And the presenter seemed like a really nice guy, an architect, and he was showing all these slides, citing all these numbers that I think many of us have heard before about global warming. And a lot of the statistics he was showing seemed way off. They seemed almost so frighteningly bad that I couldn't help but question, how is that even legitimately possible, the numbers that he's presenting? Now, admittedly, I do still need to look into it to figure out if those numbers are actually legitimate, but I couldn't help but question them. And yet, he was presenting all of this stuff as though it was absolute fact, like he knew it for certain. And it got me thinking, how often do we as humans, do we hear a narrative over and over? I'm sure a lot of people who question religion, for example, they probably look at people who believe in religion, and they probably look at them and go, don't you ever question that? How can you not question it? It just seems like so fake and wrong. But if you think about it, every single person who believes in the religion that they believe in, to a certain extent, they've heard that narrative for as long as they've believed in that faith. And it becomes a strong narrative. That strong narrative informs your decisions and your beliefs. Similarly, with global climate change, I think a narrative, a near religious narrative, has been presented for so long, we just accept it as fact. And I'm not trying to say that it's not. Okay? I want to make it really clear that I do believe that there are things happening with climate change. I do believe that there are definitely problems with pollution, and much of it is man-made, man-caused. But I also question the narratives. One of the things that really struck me in his presentation was this discussion of nuclear power, and he tried to debunk it as a potential solution for climate change, and trying to claim that wind was the solution. And I couldn't help but laugh when I saw that part, because I was just thinking, how often have I driven through Wyoming, which is really close to where I am? There are tons of windmills throughout Wyoming, and they are always off. Like, the vast majority of the turbines are just plain off. They're not spinning, even though it's windy. And why? Well, because there's an optimal operating range, and oftentimes the wind exceeds the optimal operating range. And in other words, it's more than 15 miles per hour, which it doesn't take much for wind to get above 15 miles per hour. So what they do is the power company actually locks the turbines. And I'm sure if you've seen these massive windmills, I'm sure you've seen windy days where many of them are locked and not turning. And it's one of those things where you can't help but wonder, how is that actually helping if the whole idea is that these wind turbines are supposed to be producing electricity to replace things like natural gas and coal, which I wholeheartedly would love to switch off of coal and gas for electrical power consumption. But frankly, wind and solar, they're flaky. They're not consistent enough. So then these people promoting renewables, they talk about, well, we need batteries. We need battery storage systems. Okay. So you're going to pollute the environment by mining cobalt, primarily in Africa with slave labor owned by the Chinese. Also that you can make a bunch of lithium-ion batteries that are highly explosive and don't work when the temperature gets too hot. It's not to say that lithium-ion batteries aren't great, but do we really want our power grid dependent on the reliability of lithium-ion batteries? I mean, I'm sure we've all had a battery fail on us or overheat. So this is something that I think is a non-starter, and it's not to say that we shouldn't at least do some of it, but we can't rely wholly upon it. I think we need more solutions to our electric production. And that's why when he was bad-mouthing nuclear, saying, oh, well, it takes so long for it to get built, and it's always over budget, and okay, yeah, that's actually an argument for streamlined government regulation, not an argument for the elimination of nuclear power plants. Because here in the United States, the real problem with nuclear power plants is that the federal government is so strict and overbearing and capricious with their enforcement of the nuclear regulations that it makes it near impossible for a new nuclear power plant to actually come online. And the irony of this is that nuclear power produces for so much less input, so much more power. And the waste, the pollutants, are solid and containable. And yes, I know it's scary, but if you understand nuclear science, and I happen to know a fair amount about nuclear science thanks to my uncle, who is a nuclear physicist. He's taught me a lot about it. And I will tell you that you can contain it. It is safe, and it is a consistent, reliable source of power. And that's not even to mention the fact that the old style nuclear generators, which are the ones that everybody's scared of, aren't even the ones that are being designed right now. The fourth and fifth, sixth generation fission nuclear power plants are far safer. They have automatic fail safes that don't require energy inputs to shut the core down and to make it safe in the event of a disaster. So you can completely contain it. You can prevent the meltdowns without any input of energy. So there's that. And then on top of that, we have these new inventions out there. They're shipping container nukes. I call them shipping container nukes because basically it is a commercial grade nuclear power generation module, similar to what you find on U.S. Navy ships. Okay, we're talking about those giant aircraft carriers and destroyers that the U.S. Navy has, and they are powered by nuclear energy. And how? Okay, you've got a mobile vessel. Okay, it's sailing around the world using nuclear power. So it's good enough for the U.S. Navy, but apparently it's not good enough for the average people, even though it's a decades-old technology and perfectly safe. Well, they've got designs out there. There are companies actually trying to develop this, where it's a shipping container-sized nuclear module that can be set into the ground inside a concrete sarcophagus and with no inputs produce power for 600 homes. 600 American homes, that is. And all of you non-Americans, you know, we Americans, we have these gigantic homes and we use tons of electricity because we're wasteful, yes, and also we like big spaces. We like having our big homes. So yeah, we use a lot of electricity to heat and cool those homes. Anyways, so 600 of those homes for 20 years off of one shipping container sized nuke that's buried into a concrete sarcophagus in the ground with the electrical leads popping up and feeding those 600 homes. Now, think about it. These shipping container nukes, they would be buried in the ground, closely monitored by the government to ensure their safety, with webcams and everything, so that you can have a safe and reliable and distributed electrical grid. Just think about how awesome that is. Think about how awesome the idea that you could have something that requires zero inputs for 20 years and power that much for 20 years. It's fantastic. And there would be no environmental damage due to it. And yet we're not doing it. Instead, we're building wind turbines, which kill birds and bats. They create obstructions to views, and they're not running half the time. But I just had to rebut that particular continuing education course, because I was looking at it and I'm just like, this is wrong. Look, I think climate change is a legitimate problem, and we need to reduce greenhouse gases, but we can't do it without nuclear. The problem is just too large to think that we can do it with only renewables. So that's my message for the day. Hope you enjoyed the hike with me. I'm the colorblind architect. Peace out.